hospital receives 1/5 of its flu vaccine shipments from company X and the remainder of shipments from other companies. Each shipment contains a very large number of vaccine vials. For company X's shipments, 10% of the vials are ineffective. For every other company, 2% of the vials are ineffective. The hospital tests 30 randomly selected vials from a shipment and finds that one vial is ineffective. What is the probability that the shipment came from company X? So the first thing I would label is the probability of X shipment is equal to 0.2, right? Because it says 1/5 of flu vaccine shipments come from company X. Okay, so the probability of the X is 0.2. Now the probability of X complement, meaning the remainder of the flu vaccine shipments come from other companies, right? It says here. So the probability of the X complement, the other company shipments, is going to be 0.8. Okay, so now that we found it, what we're looking for essentially is the probability of X given that the I, and we're going to let I be the number of ineffective vials. So what we're looking for is X given I is equal to 1. Right? Because this is the conditional probability given here. The hospital tests 30 randomly selected vials from a shipment and finds that one vial is ineffective. Right? So I is equal to 1. That's the given, and they're saying that the given that one is ineffective, what is the probability that the shipment came from company X? So notice that from the base formula you can derive another formula that you've probably seen before, in which you flip these two in a fraction. What you're going to have is probability of the I being equal to 1 given that there was an X shipment from the company X, divided by, and also don't forget to multiply this by the probability of X, right? That completes the Bayes formula numerator, divided by this part plus the other possibility. The ineffective is 1 comes from the second shipment, right? Given the second shipment, what is the probability of the ineffective vial? Because the ineffective vials can also come from the other companies besides the company X, right? That's why it has to exist. And notice that so far we're only seeing the probability of X and probability of X complement that we found, but we need to find now these parts, right? We need to find these two are the same. We need to find these two parts, this part and this part. Okay, we already found the probability of X and the probability of X complement, and that's the same thing, right? So we need to find these two parts and then we'll be good. So now let's find this part first. So we're trying to see, given that the shipment came from company X, what's the probability that there will be one ineffective vial? And notice that some people may be confused. You might be like, isn't that 10%? So isn't the probability that the ineffective will be equal to 10%? No. Keep in mind, it's not the same thing that when you're saying you're picking one, let's say, out of the 30, what's the probability that it's going to be ineffective, right? So suppose that 30 come from company X shipment. What is the probability that when you pick one, it's going to be equal, it's going to be ineffective? It's going to be 10%, right? It's going to be 0.1. But here, this is a different story. You're trying to determine the probability that there will be one ineffective in the list of 30, right? In the 30 contained randomly selected vials, right? That's not the same thing. The wording is slightly different, and for that reason, we need to use the binomial distribution. The binomial distribution will have to choose k from n. N is equal to 30, and k is going to be equal to 1, the number of ineffective vials. Okay, and now we're going to use individual probability, which is 0.1, which will be raised to the first power, the k value, and then 0.9, the individual probability of selecting an effective vial, raised to the power of 29, the difference between 30 and 1. And notice that I can explain to you how you can think of understanding it. Notice that 30 choose 1 is 30. Okay? So you basically meaning that you can select, you can assign the possibility of each vial out of the 30 being ineffective, right? Because having one ineffective can be achieved 30 different ways, right? That's why essentially multiplying this by 30, you will have 30 different cases, right? And of course each case is separate. That's why you will have 30 different cases, because you will be biased if you think that only the first, let's say, vial is ineffective, right? You can also say, but what about the second vial? The second vial can be ineffective and the rest will be effective, and so forth and so forth. So that's why you would add 30 times this, and that's why it makes sense that 30 will be multiplied by this. 30 choose 1 is 30, right? So this way you understand that this is a completely different question than if you were to ask, if I were to have 30 randomly selected vials from shipment of company X, what's the probability of selecting one ineffective? That would be 10%, 0.1. But here you're saying, what is the probability that given the shipment from company X, that one will be exactly ineffective? You see, that's a different type of question. You should differentiate that and not confuse yourself. Okay, so that's that. Okay, and now we have to find the probability that given that the shipment came from the other companies, what is the probability that there will be exactly one ineffective, right? And that will be the same thing. We're going to choose 1 from 30. The probability will be not 10%, the individual probability of selecting an ineffective one. It will be what? It will be 2%, right, from every other company. So 0.02 raised to the first power, and then the complement of that probability will be 98%, right? So 98% in other companies will be effective. So 0.98 raised to, again, the 29th power. Okay, so now we have these two pieces and we're ready to find the answer. Okay, so given that one is ineffective, what is the probability that it came from shipment from company X? Right? So so we have this now. So 30 choose 1 is 30. 0.1 to the first power 0.1, 0.9 to the 29th. And now don't forget, also in the formula you have to multiply this by the probability that the shipment came from company X, right, which is 0.2. And now you're going to divide it by the same thing in the denominator as the first part, plus this part, right, that we just found, which was 30, 0.02, and then 0.98 to the 29th. And don't forget one little piece, this piece, the probability that the shipment came from other companies, 0.8. If you forget this, you will be in a big trouble, because you will have a completely wrong answer as a result if you miss this small piece, 0.8. So if you do this right, you should get a rounded answer, which is going to be 0.10. And this will be available in the answer choices provided. There will be 5 answer choices and this will be one of them. So I hope this was useful and fun. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.